Okay, so we're going to talk about function rules. A function rule, you can really think of it as just an equation. And we probably won't see the term function rule used very often. You would just refer to it as a function, sometimes a formula, sometimes an equation. They're not all interchangeable, but that's what we kind of use. An independent variable, this is the input, or a lot of times this will be the x values. It is independent because it does not depend on anything. It can choose itself. It's where you start. The dependent variable depends on the independent variable in the function itself, and these are the y values. So the independent variables are inputs, they're picked, and then the dependent variables are a result of what input was picked. The functions, the verbal rule. So there's kind of different ways we can represent functions. Verbal rule would just be saying like the output is 3 more than the input. And then to represent this as an equation, we can say y equals x plus 3. Notice this kind of pattern here. Outputs y is means equal, 3 more than plus 3. The input is x. You could also represent this with a table. So here are just 5 inputs, 0 through 4, along with their respective outputs. And it's good to get used to like seeing functions in different representations. So the domain for the function y is equal to x plus 4 is 0, 2, 3, 6, and 7. So when you're told the domain, that is inputs. And those are the only possible inputs if it's the domain. That's where it's restricted to only those values. And make a table for the function and identify the range. So the table, we're just going to label our table x and y, and we'll keep them horizontal here. And then my inputs are 0, 2, 3, 6, and 7. And I encourage you to pause the video and see if you can find the range. So the range is just the y values. And we're going to do x plus 4. So I'm going to take the x, 0, and add 4 and get 4. Here I'll take x2 and add 4. So that's 6. 3 plus 4 is 7. 6 plus 4 is 10. And then 7 plus 4 is 11. Try to box in our table a little bit, make it look a little neater. So there's our table. And then our range, we'll go ahead and write it down just to make sure it's clear. But our range is just the y values or the outputs. So 4, 6, 7, 10, and 11 is the range. Okay, to write a rule for the functions, you'll study this a lot in mathematics. So we're starting out just with the very basic stuff. That doesn't mean it's easy, but there's a lot of different ways you can write a rule for this function. We're just going to look at the relationship between each input and the output. So if you look at the input, what happens to the output? So if I have 1 and go to 0, well, I subtracted 1. Let's see if that holds. If I have 2 and go to 1, that holds. I subtract 1. 4 to go to 3, subtract 1, and you could check. So each time you're taking the input and subtracting 1. So that means our output is equal to the input minus 1. I'm going to put this and this there as a reminder. Like I said, there's other ways to write, come up with this function from this table. But right now, just look at the relationship between the inputs and the outputs. Okay, and let's look at that in terms of a word problem as well. So I would encourage you to pause the video right now, try these questions, and then push play and see how you did. So at a community center, art lessons are offered at night. The fee is $12 per lesson. Kind of highlight that or underline that. And you may attend up to 5 lessons. So you can go 5 times. Up to means 5's included. Write the amount you will spend as a function of the number of lessons you attend. And we're going to use the 3 steps to the less problem solving method and identify the independent and dependent variables the domain and the range. Okay, so let's have X be the number of lessons. That is assigned for numbers, not just a hashtag. And then Y is equal to the total fee. Yeah, we'll say fee. I guess we'll just say price. Okay, so what might help is making a table since we did that earlier. So let's just do that for this. So we have our variables. And then we'll need an equation. Let's do one more here. So you could attend, I guess you could attend 0 lessons, right? It could be $0, $0. Or you could attend 1 and it would be 12. You could attend 2 lessons and it would be 24. 3 lessons would be 36. 4 lessons would be 48. And then 5, let's squeeze that in here. 5 would be 60. Okay, so this is the situation for these art lessons. And then we want to write an equation. So our equation would be Y is equal to, let's see what's happening. One thing is you notice that the difference between the input and output is changing each time. Like here I'm adding nothing, here I'm adding 11, here I'm adding 22. So addition and subtraction doesn't work. So then you go to multiplication. Try that. Okay, well here at 0 doesn't tell me much. Here at 1 to 12, I'm doing multiplying times 12. Here 2 times 12 is 24. So we're taking our input and multiplying it by 12 each time. And you could probably gather that from just the situation because it's $12 per lesson. And so that per is like multiplying. But if you just had the table and needed to write an equation rule or a function rule, don't forget about the ability to multiply the input times the number or divide for that matter. Okay, so there's our equation. And then we want to identify the independent and dependent variables. Okay, so that's what we did up here. This is the independent. This is dependent. And then make sure we say the domain and range. So our domain, we already listed these in our table, but we'll list them again here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then range would be 0, 12, 24, 36, 48, and 60. Okay, let's look at the next one. And make sure you pause the video and try to do this on your own here. The next two. Okay, so make a table for the function y equals 5 with this domain. Y equals x minus 5, excuse me. 29's in there too. And identify the range of the table. So let's make our x, and our range is 10, 12, 15, 18, and 29. We'll kind of make this into a table. And if you want to do your tables vertical, you can, although I didn't leave you as much room. And then our y, we're doing x minus 5. And so I'm going to take my x value and subtract 5. So 10 minus 5 is 5. 12 minus 5 is 7. 15 minus 5 is 10. 18 minus 5 is 13. And 29 minus 5 is 24. And that was kind of quick. That's why I said pause the video, try to do the subtraction on your own, and make sure you have that down. Okay, and then our range is just our y values, our outputs. And so we'll list those again. And so there's our possible outputs, which makes up our range. Okay, B says write a rule for the given function, identify the domain and range. So now you're looking for a pattern, and we're just looking at each pair, each input and output. So how can I go from 1 to 8? Well, I could add 7, or I could multiply by 8. At 2 to 16, add 7 doesn't work, so I throw that out. So the only way to go to 2 to 16 in this case is multiply by 8, excuse me. And that holds through. 3 times 8 is 24. 4 times 8 is 32. Now, this is a little tricky if you do not know your multiplication facts super well. And so to work around that, just use division. You can kind of work off to the side. Well, 8 divided by 1 is 8. And 16 divided by 2 is 8. So that means you're multiplying by 8 each time. Okay, so that means my function is y is equal to 8 times x. My domain is all the inputs, or time, in this case. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Make sure you use a comma separating each one. And then the range is all the outputs, which is 8, 16, 24, and 32. As always, please reach out if you have any questions.